There's something powerful about silence, not the silence that comes from weakness or defeat, but the silence that comes from control. When you pull back your energy, when you stop chasing, stop explaining, stop proving, that's when people start to notice your worth. Because here's the truth: when you're always available, always giving, always showing up, people forget to value you. You become part of the background, predictable, familiar, and familiarity breeds comfort, but it also breeds complacency. So sometimes the best thing you can do is step away, not out of anger, not out of ego, but out of self-respect. When you pull back, you give people the space to feel your absence, and that space teaches them what your presence was really worth. People remember the one who stopped texting first. They remember the one who stopped trying to fix everything. They remember the one who finally said, "Enough. I'm done chasing peace where I only find chaos." When you walk away with quiet confidence, the world shifts because your silence speaks louder than any argument ever could. It says, "I know my value. I don't need to beg for attention, affection, or approval." Here's the beauty of it. The moment you stop running after people, you start running toward yourself. You start investing that same energy back into your growth, your goals, your peace. And that's when everything changes. Your energy becomes rare. Your presence becomes powerful. People start wondering, what happened? Why did they pull away? Why do I feel this emptiness? And that's when they realize you were never ordinary. So don't be afraid to go quiet. Don't be afraid to let them miss you, because missing you is their lesson, and mastering your peace, that's your power. When you stop overgiving, you stop living in reaction to others and start living in alignment with yourself. And the moment you do that, you rise. So let them talk, let them wonder, let them miss you. You're not disappearing, you're evolving. And when you return, you won't need to prove a single thing. Silence is power. Your absence teaches others your true value. It's one of life's hardest lessons because we're conditioned to believe that being present, available, and accommodating earns us appreciation. We think the more we give, the more we'll be valued. But the truth is, when you constantly give yourself to everyone around you, people start to take your presence for granted. They stop noticing your effort, they stop valuing your time, and they stop feeling your importance. It's not because they're bad people, it's because human nature adapts. We get used to what's always there. The daily sunrise is breathtaking, but how many people stop to admire it every morning? The same happens with you. When you show up for everyone all the time, they start to assume you'll always be there. They stop recognizing your worth until you step away. That's why silence isn't weakness, it's strength. It's choosing not to respond to disrespect, not to chase people who pull away, not to explain your worth to those who refuse to see it. Silence says, "I'm secure enough to walk away without a scene. I don't need to prove anything to you." And that quiet power shakes people more than anger ever could. When you go silent, you change the energy dynamic. You take control back. Suddenly, the people who used to ignore your messages start to wonder why you stopped reaching out. The ones who underestimated you begin to question their assumptions. Because silence forces reflection. It makes people face the emptiness left behind when your voice, your care, your support are no longer there. It's not about playing games or manipulating others. It's about recognizing that your energy has value. You can't keep pouring into people who drain you. Every time you explain yourself to someone who's already decided not to understand, you give away a piece of your peace. Every time you try to prove your worth, you tell yourself you need permission to be valued. But when you choose silence, you reclaim your power. You say, "I don't need your validation. I know who I am. In silence, you also meet yourself again. You start to see where you've been giving too much and receiving too little. You realize that your worth isn't tied to how much you do for others. It's tied to how you see yourself when no one else is watching. The quiet gives you clarity. You notice which relationships were built on genuine connection and which ones survived only on your effort. You see who checks in when you stop initiating. You learn who respects you even when you're not around. And slowly, you stop seeking closure from others. You stop needing explanations. You begin to understand that silence is the closure. If someone doesn't notice your absence, that's your answer. If they don't care that you've gone quiet, that tells you everything. Silence doesn't just reveal who others are, it reveals who you've become. When you stop over-communicating, over-apologizing, and over-explaining, you make space for peace. That peace becomes addictive. You start to feel lighter. You stop reacting to everything and start responding only when necessary. You no longer waste words on people who don't listen. You save your energy for what actually matters. And the people around you, they notice. They might not admit it, but they feel the shift. They sense the distance. They feel the loss of your energy, your presence, your care. That's when they realize that what they thought was ordinary was actually rare. You were the one who listened without judgment. You were the one who cared when no one else did. You were the one who showed up without being asked. And when that energy disappears, the world gets a little quieter for them too. That's the power of your silence. It makes others aware of what they lost, and it makes you aware of what you deserve. Sometimes silence is the only language that people understand. You can't teach respect by arguing for it. You can't teach appreciation by demanding it. You teach it stepping back, by letting the absence of your presence speak louder than your words ever could. Because when you remove yourself from where you're not valued, you create space for people to see your value clearly. You'll notice how silence changes things. The same people who once dismissed you start to remember your kindness. The ones who ignored you start to reach out. The ones who underestimated you begin to question their assumptions. But by then you're different. You're not waiting for their attention anymore. You've learned that your worth was never dependent on their recognition. You start to understand that silence is not passive. It's an active choice. It's you deciding to protect your peace instead of defending your pain. It's you realizing that you don't owe anyone access to your time, energy, or emotions. And once you embrace that, you stop giving your power away so easily. You become more intentional about where your energy goes. You spend time with people who value your presence without needing your constant effort. You pour into yourself the same love you used to pour into others. You stop chasing closure from people who never deserved your openness in the first place. The most powerful people aren't the loudest. They're the ones who can stay calm when everyone else is trying to provoke them. They don't react. They observe. They don't chase. They attract. And they don't argue. They let silence do the talking. When you start using silence this way, people begin to treat you differently. They sense your boundaries without you having to announce them. They realize you're not someone who can be taken for granted anymore. Your presence becomes something they respect, not something they assume. And in that transformation, something beautiful happens. You no longer fear losing people. You stop worrying about who stays and who leaves, because you understand that anyone who truly values you won't need to be reminded to treat you right. Silence taught you that. It showed you who deserves your words and who deserves your distance. Silence is power because it shifts attention inward. It allows you to heal, to grow, and to regain control of your narrative. It doesn't mean you've given up. It means you've risen above the noise. It's not withdrawal, it's elevation. When you master the art of silence, you stop trying to be understood and start being at peace with being misunderstood, because your peace becomes more important than their perception. When your silence enters the room, people feel it. They sense your confidence, your calm, your self-respect. And without saying a word, you communicate everything you need to, that you know your value and you no longer need to prove it. Stop chasing others. Start investing that energy in yourself. It sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest shifts to make, because we live in a world that teaches us to seek validation. From the moment we're young, we're told to fit in, to please, to be liked. We measure our worth by how many people approve of us, by who chooses us, by who stays. But the truth is, the more you chase people, the further away they run. The more you try to prove your worth to someone, the more you convince yourself you don't have it. Real power begins the moment you decide to stop chasing others and redirect all that energy back into yourself. When you chase people, you hand them control. You start to bend, adjust, and reshape yourself just to be accepted. You say yes when you want to say no. You silence your opinions to avoid conflict. You go out of your way to please people who wouldn't even cross the street for you. And little by little, you lose pieces of yourself trying to earn what should have been freely given. Respect, attention, care. You start to feel exhausted because you're running on empty, pouring from a cup no one refills. But the moment you stop chasing, something changes inside you. You stop trying to prove your worth to people who never saw it, and you start proving it to yourself. You begin to ask better questions, not why don't they like me, but why do I need their approval? Not why did they leave, but why was I holding on to someone who didn't see my value? That's where the transformation begins. Not when you get validation, but when you no longer crave it. When you start investing in yourself, your energy shifts. Instead of trying to make others happy, you start focusing on what makes you fulfilled. You take that time you used to spend worrying about people's opinions and use it to learn, grow, and build something real. You stop chasing temporary attention and start creating lasting confidence. You begin to see that the love, peace, and validation you were searching for in others were always things you could give yourself. Every hour spent chasing someone who doesn't see you is an hour stolen from your growth. Every text you send trying to get someone's attention could have been time spent mastering a skill, reading something that expands your mind, or working on your dreams. When you start pouring that energy into yourself, people feel it. You become grounded. Your presence changes. You no longer move out of desperation. You move out of direction. The ones who once ignored you start to notice the shift, because people can feel when your energy changes from seeking to owning. You start to walk differently, speak differently, think differently. You no longer try to convince anyone of your value. You embody it. That's what self-investment does. It builds a quiet confidence that doesn't need validation. And it's not just about career or appearance. It's about internal alignment, doing the inner work that makes you stronger, calmer, and more self-aware. You start asking yourself what kind of energy you want around you. Begin setting boundaries, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. You choose peace over people pleasing, growth over comfort, and authenticity over approval. When you invest in yourself, you start building the life you once waited for others to give you. You realize you don't need someone else to complete you. You're already whole. You just needed to stop giving your power away to people who didn't know what to do with it. You stop waiting for someone to see your potential and start acting on it yourself. You stop waiting for opportunities and start creating them. Every time you pour into yourself, you're sending a message to the world, I am enough. You stop settling for half love, half effort, half presence. You stop tolerating inconsistency because you've learned what consistency feels like when you give it to yourself. You stop begging for time and attention because your own attention becomes the most valuable thing you have. And the irony is, when you stop chasing, you start attracting. When you no longer need validation, you become magnetic. People are drawn to those who move with purpose and peace. You no longer cling to anyone because you're not operating from lack, you're operating from abundance. You've filled your own cup, and that fullness draws the right people and opportunities toward you naturally. The more you invest in yourself, the less you depend on external approval. You stop being reactive. You don't panic when someone pulls away or when people don't meet your expectations. Instead, you stay centered, knowing that your peace doesn't depend on anyone else's presence. That's when you truly become free, because freedom isn't about having everything you want. It's about not needing anything from anyone to feel complete. Investing in yourself doesn't mean you stop caring about people. It means you stop losing yourself for them. It means you learn to give from a place of strength, not emptiness. You start surrounding yourself with people who add value, not drain it. You learn to say no without guilt and yes without fear. You realize that love, friendship, and connection flourish best when they come from two whole individuals, not from one person trying to fill another's void. And yes, some people will leave when you stop chasing. Some will fade away when you stop overextending yourself. Let them. Their absence creates space for something better, people who value you for who you are, not for what you give them. When you invest in yourself, you stop trying to force connections and start allowing genuine ones to form. The moment you stop chasing others, you step into your power. You begin to radiate a confidence that can't be faked because it's built on self-awareness, not attention. It's the kind of confidence that doesn't need an audience to feel validated. It's quiet, grounded, and unshakable. You begin to look at your past differently too. You stop seeing rejection as a wound and start seeing it as redirection. You realize that every person who didn't choose you was just pointing you back toward yourself. Every time someone walked away, they were creating space for you to walk toward your own growth. When you redirect your energy inward, life responds differently. Opportunities align, people respect your boundaries, and your self-worth grows. You stop fighting for your place in someone else's life and start building a life where you belong naturally. You realize that chasing was never the answer. Alignment was. And alignment begins with self-investment. It takes courage to stop chasing, to sit with the silence, to face yourself. But in that space, you find everything you were looking for in others: peace, purpose, confidence, love. The chase ends and the growth begins. Let them miss you. Your peace is your greatest form of strength. There comes a point in life when you realize not every battle is worth fighting, not every person is worth chasing, and not every situation deserves your reaction. The strongest move you can make is to protect your peace, even if that means walking away in silence. Because peace is not weakness, it's control. It's the ability to remain calm in chaos, grounded in conflict, and centered in a world that constantly tries to pull you out of yourself. Letting people miss you doesn't mean you're playing games or acting distant. It means you're choosing yourself over constant noise. You're giving yourself space to breathe, to think, to heal. It's understanding that not everyone deserves immediate access to your energy. And not everyone should have the privilege of your constant presence. When you decide to step back, you create room for reflection, both for yourself and for others. They begin to feel the weight of your absence, and you begin to feel the lightness of your peace. Peace doesn't come from external validation. It comes from knowing who you are and refusing to be shaken by what others think. It's realizing that you can't control how people treat you, but you can control how long you allow it. When you stop engaging in every argument, stop reacting to every provocation, stop explaining your worth to those who refuse to see it. That's strength. Silence and distance speak a language that words never could. They communicate that you value your mental and emotional balance more than the temporary satisfaction of proving a point. When you let people miss you, you teach them what your presence was worth, as long as you're always available, always responding, always accommodating. People will take you for granted. They'll assume your energy is endless, your patience infinite, your kindness permanent. But when you go quiet, when you choose peace over participation, suddenly they start noticing what they've lost. They remember your warmth, your effort, your consistency, all the things they overlooked when they thought you'd never leave. Your peace becomes your statement. You no longer need to shout to be heard or fight to be seen. You don't have to prove your value through effort. Your composure does it for you. When you're at peace, you radiate something rare, self-control, and that calmness unnerves people who expect a reaction. It confuses those who thrive on drama because they can't understand someone who refuses to play their game. You stop feeding their chaos with your energy. You stop being predictable. You become unrateable. And in that stillness, you become powerful. Choosing peace doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself enough not to be consumed. It means you've learned that sometimes the best response is none at all. It's not coldness, it's clarity. You understand that arguing with someone committed to misunderstanding you is energy wasted. You understand that forcing love, friendship, or attention only leads to resentment. So you stop forcing, you let people come and go freely because your peace doesn't depend on who stays. It depends on how centered you remain. The moment you stop chasing, reacting, and over-explaining, something shifts inside you. You begin to realize how heavy your old habits were. The constant need to be understood, to fix things, to be seen, to be validated, all of it kept you in chaos. Peace feels unfamiliar at first because you're used to movement, noise, and emotional turbulence. But as you sit in it, you start to recognize its strength. You begin to see that peace isn't passive. It's active protection of your energy. It's saying no to the things that disturb your inner calm. When you protect your peace, you stop trying to control outcomes. You stop overthinking what people mean or how they feel about you. You stop replaying conversations in your head and wondering if you said the right thing. You simply allow life to unfold without constant resistance. That doesn't mean you stop caring about growth. It means you stop letting external noise dictate your emotions. You learn to respond instead of react. You learn to pause instead of panic. And as you embrace peace, you start to attract different experiences. The more peaceful you become, the less drama you tolerate. The more self-assured you are, the fewer explanations you feel obligated to give. The quieter your mind gets, the louder your intuition becomes. You begin to feel what's right and what's wrong without needing to analyze it endlessly. Peace sharpens your instincts because your mind isn't cluttered with chaos. Letting people miss you isn't about creating distance to manipulate them. It's about giving space for perspective. People only recognize consistency when it disappears. They only appreciate reliability when it's no longer guaranteed. When you remove your presence from people who took it for granted, they finally see what you brought into their lives. But by then, you've changed. You're no longer seeking to be missed. You're simply content in your stillness. Peace doesn't mean you stop feeling emotions. It means you stop being ruled by them. You still get angry, hurt, disappointed, but you don't let those emotions control your actions. You let them pass without letting them define you. You don't allow temporary feelings to destroy permanent balance. That's emotional intelligence. That's growth. And that's the kind of strength that can't be faked. As you continue protecting your peace, you'll start noticing who respects it and who challenges it. Some people will be drawn to your calmness. Others will be uncomfortable around it because they can't manipulate what they can't provoke. That's when you'll realize peace is also a filter. It naturally separates what's meant for you from what's not. You won't have to force anything. Peace will do the work for you. There's nothing louder than a calm person in a world full of noise. People remember how you made them feel, and when your energy is grounded, it leaves an impression. It speaks of discipline, self-worth, and boundaries. It shows you've mastered the art of walking away gracefully. You no longer need to argue to prove your truth or stay to prove your loyalty. You've learned that peace is not found in the approval of others, but in the stillness within yourself. Letting people miss you is a form of self-respect. It's telling the world that your presence is not to be taken lightly. You understand that your time, energy, and attention are currencies, and not everyone can afford them. When you protect your peace, you become selective. You stop giving discounts on your worth. You stop begging to be understood or chosen. You let your silence, your calm, and your peace speak for you. The more you protect your peace, the more powerful you become, because peace gives you perspective. It helps you see beyond emotion, beyond impulse, beyond ego. You start to understand that control doesn't come from dominance. It comes from discipline. You don't react to everything because not everything deserves your energy. You don't explain yourself to everyone because not everyone deserves your story. You simply choose peace over performance, clarity over chaos, and strength over struggle.